Well, another episode of Sparks Family has just dropped, and boy was this one a bit interesting, to say the least. We're following up from the 2-episode tennis arc, of which we finally have another Your-centric episode. And I think this one pretty much sums up, other aspects of Yor's character. And it also cements my theory about Lloyd. Lloyd is a bit like James Bond. Namely, he starts up relationships with women just for probably most likely for the sake of the mission. He might even feel a little bit towards them, but he breaks it off because that's the life he chose. But now, he's only realised the fact that Yor has become really attached, and the whole episode is literally just the fact of Yor starting off with a stupid. I think the gag of her walking into a bowl was quite funny. The other aspect I think I like about the whole episode was just the fact that Yor gets, I think pretty much does the standard does something right standard, which is get drunk. Literally, she downs an entire bottle of I don't know what. It might have been about the fact it was orange. It could have been wine, or it could have been something. Well, it was something quite potent, but she drank the whole bottle and she was drunk. Well, not drunk, but sort of left her filter. It's supposed to be the funny feeling that Yor probably has been drunk many times before, for some reason or another. And she's very tolerant of liquor. Stable enough to kick your Lloyd flying, but drunk enough so the fact she doesn't remember the whole thing the night after. That was quite funny, because the fact he had to explain the whole thing again, because she was quite busy how bad of a hangover was. She basically drunk herself stupid. How someone was still able to stand, and still have a reasonable degree of control over her own body. That was actually quite funny. Another thing that was also quite funny about that whole gag thing was I think this is the first time we always ever felt any sort of strong attraction to someone. She might have had others in the past, but as usual, being, I guess, technically a single parent to her younger brother, and her younger brother's constant meddling has probably scuppered quite a few many of them, given the fact they probably ended up in a secret police camp, or in a gulag, or disappeared. Sneaky little bastard. But besides the point, it was quite funny to see the fact of Yor, I think, just going, sort of is the fact of, oh my god, he's saying things, I don't know what to do, and then clang, off he goes, and he does an expert backflip. But the way I think Lloyd reacted, he always kind of reacted as if he'd partly been kicked in the groin, but I think it was a heavy blow. And bear in mind the fact that Yor is quite possibly very powerful for her size. I think the other brilliant or funny thing was also the fact of, I think for a fact that Lloyd just telling his best friend and his supplier, look, babysit Yor for an evening or so. Here's some cash. This will keep her quiet. That was hilarious. And I think the other thing also, was the fact that I think Lloyd is wondering what he's going to do. I think I've seen it before. You see it in the opening credits. You see it a couple of times before. He's sort of wondering if this is his life. I mean, this is the life he chose, and there's no denying that. But I think part of him wants to settle down, with Anya, with Yor, and just maybe retire once this whole mission's over. Raise Anya, and maybe perhaps do something a little bit less dangerous. Maybe a death. Of course, he might not be able to sit still for 5 minutes, but that's the whole point. Maybe when the crisis is resolved, if it ever solves itself, as this is sort of 1960s Cold War, I think is the era judging by the aesthetics of the town. That could be a bit off, that's about right. The other more entertaining, I think, section of the episode was, I think, the fact of, once again, Anya's best friend deciding for a fact that Anya needs some help in the romance department. And of course, she knows sort of like a teenage notion of the whole thing. She has a big crush on Lloyd for some reason or another. But also, Anya being 6 years old said the fact, I love Mama, I love Papa, I love peanuts. What exactly does he mean by that? It's also for the fact that all of it goes over Anya's head, but she knows more than she's letting on. And that they try and make her... And so, of course, she does what she tries to do, being... takes warnings and takes her little big sister and explaining what's going on. Like, she hasn't seen the fact, and she probably thinks the fact that Anya has a crush on Damien, the same way she has a crush on Lloyd. And quite possibly, she tries to help Anya by making her stylish, and they try so many different outfits, so many different clothes on, it's quite exhausting, and they go like, I don't know what to do. This girl is impossible. And they try and they try and they try. They try 100 different things, all just to get it to work, and none of it doesn't seem quite right. But I think the best bit was at the end of that sequence was when we see them in the car. They're both tucking themselves out. They're both sleeping in the back of the car with what they'd bought, which turns out wasn't clothes. It was basically one of those charms you can get for a phone or a rucksack, like hang on the zipper. And they got a pair of them, matching, just to signify their friendship. I think that was quite interesting. Went up to get clothes and other stuff, and introduce Anya to the more adult world of fashion and everything else, and then they wound up walking away with something that was actually quite appropriate for their age. So What are you going to do? Well, I suppose they're only 6 years old, and quite frankly, her notion of romance is a bit much, and Anya doesn't even understand that. And I think most children around about that age don't, so what are you going to do? But it was funny, and it was a bit heartwarming as well. I think the other thing was also the fact that she wanted to see where Lloyd was. Lloyd, where is Lloyd? And she's always like that. She's got this huge crush on her that's so huge. It doesn't make any sense. And I know the fact that 6 years old, I know for a fact quite possibly maybe she's just erecting it. But I think the other thing is, the fact the way Anya is, it's such a fun episode, and it was brilliantly done as well. Sparks Family's been on the nose, and the romantic comedy aspect of this episode, it actually was funny. It wasn't like Western romantic comedies, which aren't, but it was genuinely funny to see Yor overreact in a huge way. So realising the fact that the man that she's been secretly bearing and burning a torch for since that first day that they met, and his charming little daughter, who's pulled at every one of her heartstrings, she wants to be Lloyd's wife, and she wants to have that family again. She wants to have that experience that she had before. Honestly, I don't get it with some people. Some people would run screaming away from someone with a child, while others it seems to be the thing that seals the deal. It's almost like the fact they want to be a parent, but they've been able to find the right person, or they've been able to find the right man or the right woman or the right couple, or the right person really, to help them raise a child. So instead they just sidle into someone else's life with someone else's child just so they can do it. And I think also probably does all the fact you don't have to change diapers. You do a little bit older, you don't have to change diapers so much, which does help. And it can be rather fun as well. And that was a point of a song about stepdads, or step-parents in general. And yeah, his biggest concern, and the song goes, the biggest concern about the dad there was the fact, how am I going to be? My wife is going into labour, and his biggest concern is the fact, how am I going to be half the dad? I just hope the fact I'm half as good as a dad that he was to me when growing up. I just like the fact of, I think how good it's been for this whole episode. Sparks Families, this is probably going to be one of the best ones yet of the part 2. Maybe not so much on the weak side in terms of the action, but comedy-wise, it was funny, joke-wise, it was good, and it was heartwarming as well. And also, they pretty much used every gag, including the drunk hungover gag as well. I tried to explain the whole thing again. That was brilliant. Well, I've been the Universal Challenger asking to please leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheerio!